A little tired of playing Titan all the time? Yeah, me too. Most Warlock players now wish they had the capabilities of a Titan who goes against hordes of enemies effortlessly and makes everyone think he's an absolute pro at the game while wearing an exotic class item with something like Synthoceps and Heart of Inmost Light. Or considering this season's biggest trend, an Arc build with Cuirass, where they slap on the Monarch and show off their post-game stats to their hunter friends, trying to scrape up a good exotic to use for the Lake of Shadow Strike. Yes, strike. Nah, I'm joking of course, but boy do I have a build ready to feast your eyes upon. Oh, and what better way to show off this build than in one of the most difficult GMs ever released. I think this will really prove a point that this is not just show and tell. This build actually works wonders in any difficult content if you play it right. Alright, so look, we all know that Warlocks are great at keeping their team alive or outputting some crazy good numbers. Now this build will not be for no crazy damage phases, but it will definitely strike fear in your enemies. This setup can be tweaked to your preference, but I believe the best combination is still the one I'm about to tell you. Now we all know the good old Necrotic Grip which poisons enemies hit by our melee, but did you also know that it gives a poison effect to weapons of sorrow which you can easily pair with this build too? Those weapons are Thorn, Osteostriga, Touch of Malice and Necrochasm. Well, sadly, in my opinion, I do not think they work very well in this build, but if you think otherwise you can definitely try them and share your thoughts down in the comments. However, I think hard content requires hard-hitting artillery, so get ready for... Whoops, wrong one. Bastion. I know, it's an old long-forgotten exotic, but its perk, Saint's Fist, is actually working wonders with this build. It reads this: after a successful melee hit, this weapon gains increased damage, reduced charge time, and improved reload speed. But also, hitting a target with most of the pellets in a burst increases melee damage for a short duration. So this works perfectly with our exotic armor choice, and you'll see why it works so well here in a minute. Since we already know our exotic armor and gun, let's continue to our super and aspects. First of all, we are using Prismatic, and the super I chose for this build is Song of Flame, since it provides a whopping 90% damage reduction for you and 30% for your teammates. Plus, it's a roaming super, which will recharge insanely fast. You'll understand why very soon. Now let's focus on aspects. For this build, there are only two feasible options, and those would be Lightning Surge and Feed the Void. Let me explain. Arcane Needle has 3 melee charges, but you do not want to use them the regular way. You activate your melee while sliding, and that will activate Lightning Surge, jolting everything around you. So now you can use 3 Lightning Surges, which will apply poison effect from Necrotic Grip to nearby enemies too. And trust me, it is one hell of a combo. But wait, there's more. Since we're using Feed the Void, all kills with your overkill of a melee will proc Devour. And with Feed the Void, Devour effects are enhanced, providing more health and grenade energy. This whole combo alone is absolutely cracked. Oh, and since we're running Prismatic, wait until you experience the full power when you pop Transcendence. Now remember when I mentioned Bastion as our exotic gun choice? The best part is that now not only your melee gets increased damage, but Bastion itself is going to do 45% more damage after a melee hit. This whole setup just got way more interesting, because you can bring this build into GMs or similar content with a baguette in one hand and your keyboard in another, and still come on top of the chart at the end. Jokes aside, let's finish off with the abilities. For your class ability, I think the best option is still Phoenix Dive, and your grenade should 100% be Cold Snap Grenade. One of two reasons is because you still need to fill up that Darkness energy bar for Transcendence. The other reason, you'll understand in a second. Now let's move on to Fragments. Facet of Dawn. Powered melee hits against your targets makes you radiant. Powered melee final blows make you and nearby allies radiant. This is possibly the best aspect you can use for this build, because your radiant will be up pretty much all the time. And as we know, radiant gives a 20% damage buff and lets you pierce the shields of barrier champions. So not only this gives you ability to do more damage, but it provides great utility as well. Next is Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. Basically, doing what we already do with this build will give us even more melee energy. And as a nice addition, our Stasis Grenade will also be able to provide us with more grenade energy after defeating frozen enemies, which we kind of have to do to fill up that energy bar. Facet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. This is absolutely perfect because after freezing enemies with your Cold Snap Grenade, you will do 10% more damage to them, and this stacks with everything. Facet of Protection. This is an obvious one. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. Since this build will make you go into the middle of all the enemies, this will work absolute wonders. The base resistance is 15%, and when you are Transcendent, it goes up to a staggering 32% reduction. Facet of Blessing. Melee final blows start health regeneration, while Transcendent, melee final blows start health regeneration for you and nearby allies. This fragment helps Devour even more to keep you alive in difficult situations. Consider adding it to your build. Now why I say consider is because there is one more option I want to talk about, and that is Facet of Purpose, which says picking up an Orb of Power grants an elemental buff effect based on equipped super. I was actually considering this instead of Facet of Blessing because Devour would probably give enough healing to keep you alive in difficult content. Well, depends on how you want to play the build. However, if you do decide to run this fragment instead of Blessing, consider going for this chance super, Needlestorm, because then when you pick up an Orb of Power, it will give you Woven Mail for 5 seconds, and damage reduction from that is 45%, so it really depends on how you want to play. To me personally, Facet of Blessing feels a little bit better, but you can test it yourself and see which one you like more. Either more healing or more damage reduction. Okay, so we're almost done, but now let's focus on mods you should equip on your armor pieces. Let's start with Helmet. Definitely try running double hands-on, which will give you insane amounts of super energy, which you then will use to either survive or blow up a room full of ads. If you have a free slot open, just go for a Harmonic Siphon, and then you might want to use a matching weapon to give orbs of power. For your hands, use double heavy-handed, which will give you more potent orbs, and with 2 of them on, instead of 1, your time between activations goes from 10 to 5 seconds. If you decide to run just 1, it's completely fine, then just put on Impact Induction, which will give you grenade energy on melee hits. And since all we're doing with this build is melees, this might work even better for you rather than double heavy-handed. For your chest armor, we'll put in what we always do, double elemental resistances like Arc and Solar, and then you can decide on your own which one you like more, melee damage resistance or concussive dampener. It's kind of a tricky one because you'll be melting everything with your melee, so the enemies won't survive too long to even hit you with your melee attacks, though concussive dampener gives you reduction from incoming area of effect damage from combatants, so this one might work a little bit better. And by the way, both of them provide 15% damage resistance, so choose wisely. For your legs, I would recommend running either double kinetic surge, which will give you 17% more damage to Bastion, or try running a single one and stay on 10% extra damage, but then include invigoration with recuperation, so you can regen your health and melee a lot faster, because you will be casting your melee all the time, which will then generate orbs of power. And last but not least, your class item. I really recommend going for the regular options, which are Time Dilation and Powerful Attraction, but then include Outreach, which will give you 12% of melee energy back from every class ability activation. Now for the stat distribution, I recommend going for 100 Resilience and 100 Recovery if you can, then either go maximum possible Discipline and Strength. I went with Discipline and put everything else on Strength, but if you want almost constant uptime of melee, go for maximum possible Strength. You definitely won't regret it. And now for the last part of the build, artifact mods. Yes, they will change after this episode, but there's still a lot of it left. Definitely consider adding Dielectric and Flashover, since both of these work very well with this build, because you'll be jolting enemies and getting Bolt Charge in return. And when you get maximum Bolt Charge, you become amplified, plus your lightning bolts will do more damage. Now if you decide to run something with Void Affinity for your heavy and or energy slot, try adding mods like Volatile Marksman, Malign Harvest, or Void Flux, which will give you massive weakening explosions, and it might even feel better. However, if you do not want to use a Void Artifact mod in the last slot and want to go full on with this build, go for Particle Reconstruction since you're going to be using Bastion anyway, and then Limit Break, which will give you increased super damage when you're critically wounded, or have an elemental buff matching your super, which you definitely will have if you choose Song of Flame as your desired super. Reason being is because if you have Song of Flame equipped, which is a solar super, and you're getting Radiant from your melees because you have Facet of Dawn, that means that those two match, because they are both based on solar subclass. So what do you think about this build? You like it? You don't like it? Let me know if you're gonna attempt some difficult content with it. By the way, if you want some cool variations, you can try Winter's Guile. I won't explain too much, but you can definitely try it and see how that feels compared to Necrotic. Anyway, I hope you liked the video, and if you did, hit that like button. You can subscribe too, it's free either way. And for now, I say goodbye and see you next time.